Hi, this is Dr. Mikey Goldwire. In this lesson, we'll talk about searching specific to Medline. But first, I'd like to give an introduction to the secondary resources. Today, most secondary sources are electronic indexing systems that aid users in locating primary literature. These resources have very detailed and stepwise search engines that allow users to research the literature on a specific topic. They guide you to the primary literature. Data provided includes bibliographic citation information, also known as a citation, and this includes the article title, author, and source or journal name. Some resources will also provide the article abstract, which gives a brief description of the article, and even a link to the full text article. If the abstract is included, the secondary resource is referred to as an abstracting system. If not, the resource is an indexing system. Interpreting data from only the abstract is appealing, but usually inappropriate. You should read an abstract to decide whether you would pull the original article. Once the article is pulled, you should critically read the article and make a clinical decision based off your understanding of the study, its strengths and weaknesses. You should never base a clinical decision from simply reading an abstract. Not all secondary resources have the same collection of journals, so it is important to search different databases for a comprehensive search. An advantage of secondary resources is the vast amount of data you are able to search. Secondary sources also provide a rapid method by which to search the primary literature. The search engines employed are extensive and provide immediate results once you learn the details and how to search the secondary resource. There are several considerations you need to take into account when using secondary resources. The scope of coverage, the lag time of the source, cost and availability, and ease of use should all be considered when determining which secondary resource to use and potentially which secondary source hospitals and universities choose to subscribe. The scope of coverage. This will vary across resources. Some databases will contain journals that relate to specific topics or subject matter, such as life science, biomedicine, pharmacy, medicine. It is important to make sure that the database you are searching contains the journals that relate to your topic. Additionally, some databases will only contain U.S. articles, while others will have international scope. Likewise, some databases will restrict their journals to English language only, and therefore you might have less comprehensive coverage of the topic. While some databases will include journal articles in foreign languages, they may also provide an English abstract. The second consideration is lag time. There is a lag time between when an article is published and when it is indexed into a secondary resource. This lag time is due to the process that a journal article must go through to be indexed properly. After publication, the article is obtained by or submitted to the National Library of Medicine, where the article is assigned subject headings from a controlled vocabulary list called MESH, Medical Subject Headings. The article is then submitted to PubMed, a secondary resource. PubMed is the database that is immediately and freely available from the government. Medline is part of the PubMed database. Vendors such as EBSCO and Ovid receive data and display the articles using their own Medline databases. These Medline databases use the vendor's own interface. The time frame of this process will vary between secondary resources, but the user must keep in mind that their search may not contain the latest information on the search subject because of this lag time. However, some secondary resources are able to access these in-process records and may provide you this data. PubMed contain such records. A third consideration for secondary resources is availability and cost. These resources are very expensive and typically require a library or institutional budget to finance. Secondary resources may be priced based on the number of users the site wishes to have. As such, users will need access to the system. Another consideration is ease of use. Each secondary source uses a powerful search engine. These search engines may or may not use the same language. As such, you will need to become familiar with the database's structure and terminology to effectively search. You will need to practice your search techniques to become proficient with using secondary sources. Lastly, search techniques. There is no standardization of search terms across secondary sources. It is important to be familiar with structure and search terms of the secondary resources you are using. The medical subject heading is the index term that the National Library of Medicine uses for its databases. Another database, Iowa Drug Information Service, IDIS, which we do not have access to, uses the United States Adopted Name, or USAN, and the International Classification of Diseases, ICD coding systems. The secondary resources we will discuss include Medline via EBSCOhost and PubMed. I will not be reviewing Ovid, but many of you may have heard of Ovid, which is another interface for you to access Medline. We will also be reviewing Academic Search Premier, Google Scholar, and Cochrane Database of Systematic Reviews. Others that we will not discuss include the Iowa Drug Information Service, International Pharmaceutical Abstracts, MBase, or Excerpta Medica, BIOS Pre-Reviews and Biologic Abstracts, CancerLit, InPharma, SedBase, Reactions, ClinAlert, Current Contents, and ToxLine. Medline. Under the auspices of the National Library of Medicine, Medline is a premier bibliographic database that contains over 20 million references to biomedical journal articles. Medline is the most well-known secondary resource in the world and is produced by the NLM. The print version, Index Medicus, is no longer available. Medline contains over 5,600 biomedical journals published in the United States and other countries. Although coverage is worldwide, 91% of most recently added records are from English language sources or have English abstracts. Medline contains citations from 1966 to the present. Medline citations include the journal title, author names, abstract, mesh terms, journal, first author's affiliation, language, and publication type, whether it is a review article, randomized controlled trial, letter, etc. The lag time for articles varies, but the database itself is updated weekly. It usually takes 3 to 4 weeks for a journal article to arrive in Medline. The database is searched using a controlled vocabulary called medical subject headings, or MESH. Apart from original research articles, primary literature, Medline also contains review articles, letters to the editor, commentaries, and other types of articles. It does not include conference proceedings or symposiums.
Hi, this is Dr. Goldwire, and I'd like to show you how to use PubMed. So from the Health Science Library page, choose PubMed. Now PubMed articles are indexed using a specified vocabulary called MESH, medical subject headings. This standardized vocabulary helps users locate articles that contain MESH terms. MESH terms are organized within Medline. in a hierarchy referred to as a tree structure. For example, if we type in cardiovascular disease and choose cardiovascular diseases as a mesh term, we can scroll down to see this tree structure. Cardiovascular diseases contains cardiovascular abnormalities, cardiovascular infections, heart diseases, pregnancy complications, and vascular diseases. This is the tree structure for cardiovascular diseases. Now if we click on cardiac arrhythmias, we can see that this is further delineated into sick sinus syndrome and sinus arrest cardiac. The way we know that is under cardiovascular diseases. Some terms have a plus to the right side of the term. This means that term can be further exploded to yield subtopics, such as sick sinus syndrome and sinus arrest occurring under sinus arrhythmias. PubMed automatically explodes terms and searches for those terms underneath the term when you choose to search for that mesh term. So for example, if I was going to search the mesh term arrhythmia, sinus, I would retrieve all articles that have arrhythmia sinus and also sick sinus syndrome and also sinus arrest cardiac. So I would retrieve articles in which either of these three mesh terms were tagged. Mesh terms are further divided or further delineated through the use of subheadings. If I click on subheadings, I will get some more information. And these are qualifiers that are applied to mesh terms. They are used to describe an explicit characteristic of the mesh term. So in pharmacy, we generally will see ourselves using chemically induced and drug therapy. We may also see therapeutic use being used. So for instance, I wanted to know the drug therapy specific to sick sinus syndrome. I would choose drug therapy as my subheading. And I would click Add to Search Builder. It appears in the Search Builder box, and I can then choose to search PubMed. And you will see I get 124 entries. You will notice that this first article, Intraoperative Asystole in a Patient with Concealed Sick Sinus Syndrome, a case report, is in brackets. This means the article is not written in English, and you can see that indeed this article is written in Japanese. I do not expect you to pull any full-text articles that are not written in a language that you are fluent in. We hit our back button. I'd like to further show you two other options you may do to mesh terms. You may restrict the articles to a mesh major topic. This major topic is limiting your search to those articles that focus on sick sinus syndrome drug therapy as a major topic of the article. You may also include to not explode the terms. So you will only search those terms in which the mesh heading states. Of course, in this case, we know that there are no other terms below sick sinus syndrome, so we don't need to check this box at all. But if we did want to limit our search to those articles in which drug therapy of sick sinus syndrome was a main topic, we would choose this box, Restrict to Mesh Major Topic. We then choose Add to Search Builder. and then search PubMed. And you can see I will get 58 articles. You can look through these articles to see which titles sound interesting. You can also change your display settings to show you the abstract if you'd rather read the abstract to decide whether or not you should pull the full text article. Before we do that, I'd like to discuss searching by keywords. I would like you to use mesh terms if at all possible. Within PubMed, the system tries to match your keyword up, which is just free text, to a mesh term. So for example, the mesh term vitamin C is ascorbic acid. So again, sometimes you don't know what the mesh term is for a particular topic. So as you can see, when I type in vitamin C under the mesh database, it returns ascorbic acid. So if I click on ascorbic acid, I will get the entry terms that match to vitamin C. And you can see ascorbic acid, vitamin C matches, to ascorbic acid. And you can also see this tree structure. Ascorbic acid is found under sugar acids, which all backs all the way up to drugs and chemicals. So again, you can see underneath ascorbic acid, there is dihydroascorbic acid. So again, this tree structure helps you to define where your term fits within the database and other synonyms for your topic. However, if I don't have a mesh term, then I can use keyword searching. For example, if there is a new drug, perhaps it has not yet been matched to a mesh term. Let's type in saxagliptin. And you can see here that saxagliptin was added as a supplementary concept in 2005. So again, I can put add to search builder, and if I search PubMed, I will get 145 entries. So just for comparison, if I just put in saxagliptin without going through the mesh database, I will get 302 entries. So I do suggest, when at all possible, to go through this mesh database. So let's go back to the mesh database and search for saxagliptin. And again, I can add to search builder, but let's say I want to find it, the saxagliptin used in naive patients. So here, maybe I want to put in naive and see what comes up in the mesh database. And not so much comes up within naive patients for diabetes. So what I can do here is I can go ahead and just search PubMed with my saxagliptin. And then I can add the Boolean logic operator and then I will put in naive. So here you can see I get 17 articles that contain saxagliptin as a supplementary concept and the word naive. So looking through some of these articles, I can see that some of these are free in PubMed Central. And if I'm interested in the first one, long-term for your safety as saxagliptin in drug-naive and metformin-treated patients with type 2 diabetes, I click on the title. And what I want you to notice here is this full text links. So if you see House Science Library article linker, you should click on this button. The only time you don't click on the Health Science Library article linker is if the article is free. So in order to find out if the library has this article, I click on this linker, and I can see it brings me to an article. Whenever you have a choice of pulling up the article, choose the link that says article. I will need to put in my ID and my last name the first time. Once I do this while I'm on my searching session, it will remember my ID number and my last name. And it will bring me to the article. And here I can view the full text article in the HTML format. I can also get the PDF and download it to my laptop or my desktop. If you choose the journal link, which you may have to do if there was not a choice for the article, it will bring you to the journal link within the library system. And it will bring you to the current issue. You will have to remember the date in which the article occurs that you want to pull. So we will have to remember what we want is the December 2013 issue. So I will go to the journal Diabetic Medicine. I will choose See All. I want to see all the issues. And then I want to choose December 2013. So if I do my Control F, I can search for saxagliptin, and it will bring up the article in which I wanted to view. Long-term for your safety. There is another way by which you can find articles, and this is through the House Science Library. Locate a journal. So I would choose the journal tab here. Title begins with Diabetic Medicine. And I can see that it's a choice, and I want to choose one of these that says to present. And again, I know from there I can just choose the December 2013 issue, and I can get the article that way. So again, I just showed you 3 ways by which you can retrieve a full text article. So within PubMed, to get back to the PubMed home screen, I just click on this icon, pubmed.gov. Another useful feature of PubMed is the single citation matcher, in which you can look up one single citation if you know the journal name, the date, the author's name, and the title words.
Hi, I'd like to show you another example in PubMed. So again, in PubMed, I'd like you to use mesh terms. So let's say you receive a call from an internal medicine physician who would like to know the best way to treat severe anemia in a Jehovah's Witness. The patient has severe uterine bleeding and anemia. What information can you provide? So I did suggest going to the mesh database and typing in Jehovah's Witness. Hit enter, and it will bring you to the mesh database and the mesh term. You can see here the entry terms that map to Jehovah's Witness. You can also see the tree structure and where Jehovah's Witness falls within the tree structure. You can see that Jehovah's Witness was introduced as a mesh term in 2003. Let's choose to restrict this to a mesh major topic. So I click the button and add to search builder. The other term I was given was anemia. The Jehovah's Witness has severe uterine bleeding and anemia. So again, if I click on anemia, I'll get up the mesh term anemia. Here are the subheadings that can be applied to anemia. Here's the entry term and the tree structure, and you can see underneath the mesh term anemia, I have all these other types of anemia. But let's just go ahead and choose anemia and add to search builder. We can see our Boolean logic operator of AND here, and then we click search PubMed. I get 68 articles. Let's go ahead and see if we can use some of our limits to narrow down our search results. So the first limit I suggest is using humans. And that just took away 2 articles. The second one is English only. So again, I hit show additional filters, language, and then I hit English. And that took it down to 60. Now, what I can do is just read the titles and see what grabs me. But I may want to also consider a review article, in which case I would choose review. That narrows it down to 8 articles. So just real quickly looking at these titles, there's a couple that may work. This second one, management of severe anemia secondary to menorrhea in a Jehovah's Witness, case report and treatment algorithm. So again, if I'm interested in one, I would click on the title. So this patient had a fibroid and severe life-threatening anemia. The patient was managed conservatively, so I may want to pull this article. So again, I go over here and I choose the Health Science Library article linker. And I can see that the library does subscribe to this, and I just choose article. And it brings me to the full text of the article. I can read the HTML, or I could download the PDF. So again, I suggest you do that when you're searching for articles. The other thing you can do is create, as you see I'm already signed in, you can create a folder in PubMed, in which case you can click on an article and you can add it to your folder. See where it says send to? You can send it to your file, your bibliography, or any of these choices. The other thing I want to show you, when you find an article you think is useful, for instance, this management of severe anemia, I can look at related citations in PubMed, which will match citations that have similar mesh terms. And again, for this article, to see the mesh terms, I just choose publication types and mesh terms. And this often will help me determine what mesh terms were used in an article that I found useful. So don't forget to use the information to the right, related citations in PubMed. It's very useful. So in another example, let's say you're working in the hospital and a physician calls and wants to know what literature is available to support the use of statins in the treatment of Alzheimer's disease. What information can you provide? Again, I would suggest going to the MESH database. You can type in statins, and I can see here that the mesh term that is mapped to statins is the chemical name, hydroxymethylglutyl-CoA reductase inhibitors. Again, if I click on that title, I can see the subheadings, and I can see all the entry terms that map to this mesh term. And I also get the tree structure to see where these agents fall within the tree structure. So if I like, I can restrict it to a subheading therapeutic use and then add to search builder. The next term I want to put in is Alzheimer's disease. Again, I click on that mesh term to find more information. And if I want it here, I can put therapy of Alzheimer's disease, add to search builder, and search PubMed. Now I get 85 results. But as I know from my prior search on Jehovah's Witness, my limits are still here. So I may not want a review article, in which case I would not click the review. And you can see I get now 168. But let's go ahead and put back in review. So again, I can look at the titles, but I may want to read the abstracts, in which case I can change my display settings and I can choose abstract and apply. So this way I will see the abstract for each article that is pulled up. Cholesterol as a causative factor, is Alzheimer's disease a debatable hypothesis? Well, that sounds quite interesting, especially if you were interested more in the mechanism. Statins more than cholesterol lowering agents in Alzheimer's disease. So these are quite interesting. Alzheimer's disease and diabetes, new insights and unifying therapies. But let's say I wanted to look at articles in which Alzheimer's disease appears in the title. So what I would do is I would come down here to my search details, and where I says Alzheimer's disease therapy mesh, I may want to consider just taking the therapy out and putting title. So let's say we wanted to find articles in which Alzheimer's disease appears in the title. Well, what I would do here is probably go to my advanced search feature. And in all fields, I would choose title. And then I would put Alzheimer's disease. And then if I go back to my advanced field, I can see here that I want to add search 20 where Alzheimer's disease appears in the title. And then I want to choose this one in which I used therapeutic use of the statins in Alzheimer's disease drug therapy, number 17. So I want to add that to my builder. And then I want to hit the search field. So now I'm going to search articles in which Alzheimer's disease appears in the title, and also that were tagged with the mesh term of HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors therapeutic use in Alzheimer's disease drug therapy. And then I still have my limits of review, human, and English. And now I only get 7. So I may want to consider just looking at these 7 to begin with, and then if I decide that this is too restrictive, I would probably delete where the Alzheimer's disease occurs in the title. So I wanted to go over just briefly Ovid. Ovid is a choice by which you can search Medline. So again, you just click on Ovid Medline. And let's just review our question about the treatment of a Jehovah's Witness who is experiencing severe uterine bleeding and anemia. So I would like to just type in Jehovah's Witness. And you notice that the default is map term to subject heading. So it will map Jehovah's Witness to a mesh term. And here I can choose to explode it, which again would include all of the subtopics underneath it. Or I can choose to focus. And let's go ahead and choose to focus. That means the major topic. So the article, the major point of the article is discussing therapy in a Jehovah's Witness. So then I want to change my selection to and hit continue. I want to include all the subheadings. There are only 2 subheadings listed for a Jehovah's Witness. And then again, I want to hit the and continue. And then my next keyword is anemia. And it will map it to a subject heading. So again, I can choose this as a focus or explode, but I'm not going to do either. I'll go ahead and include all subheadings. I can change it to and, but right now I'm just going to search these 2. So how I do this is I click on the button to the left and I say combine selections with, and then I hit the and button. So I have 51 results, and these are displayed below. But that's too many results for me to review. So I want to limit it. So I'm going to limit it to English language and to a review article. So then I just hit the search button. And what it does is it takes the most current search and limits it to English language and review articles. And you see I only have 8. So then I can go down below and I can look at these titles to see if I'm interested in them. So this works basically the same way as PubMed. When a patient refuses life-saving care, issues related to treating a Jehovah's Witness. Now this was published in the American Journal of Kidney Disease. Because our patient is an obstetric patient, I may want an article that is published in an obstetric journal. So the management of pregnancy in a Jehovah's Witness, that is in obstetrics, but our patient is not pregnant. So actually I do like this, Clinical Strategies in Medical Care of a Jehovah's Witness. This is published in the American Journal of Medicine, so it's a broader based. So again, I would just pick Health Science Library article linker. And it just showed me to click this link to open up my search window. So again, I choose article. And I can get the article here, Clinical Strategies in the Medical Care Jehovah's Witness. And you can see that I can just thumb through the HTML, or I could download the PDF. So Ovid works basically the same way as PubMed. So if you want to go back to one of your prior searches, you just hit the display button. And it will display them down here below. You can also require additional limits, and it will bring you to the full screen of all the limits available, which looks very similar to the limits in PubMed. So a lot of people enjoy using Ovid because it is so simple. I tend to use PubMed because PubMed is available generally anywhere. Ovid is quite expensive, so not a lot of health science libraries may have Ovid. But you do have access to Ovid, so I would suggest using it if you'd like to while you're in school at the University of Colorado. To review with you the Boolean operators. So the Boolean operators are and, or, and not. And they help you to construct searches. The Boolean operator and will, when used, combines the search terms and returns those articles in which all of those search terms are mentioned. So the example here is looking at articles with aspirin and children and Ray's syndrome. So if I put into PubMed aspirin and I join it with the Boolean logic operator and, children, and Ray's syndrome, I will return articles that contain all three of these search terms. The Boolean logic operator or allows you to broaden your search and include synonyms. For example, kidney disease or renal disease will retrieve citations using both of those terms. So I will get articles that mention both kidney disease or renal disease. And again, or is best used when you're trying to join together synonyms. The Boolean logic operator not allows you to return articles that are not mentioned, that term. So the example here is dementia but not Alzheimer's. So it's all the articles that mention dementia but do not mention Alzheimer's. Very rarely will you use the Boolean operator not, because a lot of times you will eliminate search articles in which you need to use. So again, PubMed does this for you. Again, for example, when we go to our MESH database and we are searching Jehovah's Witness, and then we can hit Add to Search Builder, and then anemia. Add to Search Builder. In PubMed, the default is AND, so the system will retrieve articles that state both Jehovah's Witness and anemia. And you can see, because I still have my limits on of review, humans, and English, I get 8 articles. Now, if I change the and to an or, you should know that I will get more articles. I'm going to get all articles that mention Jehovah's Witness or anemia. So I get more articles when I use the Boolean operator or. Again, I suggest only using or when you're looking for synonyms.